The desert wind in Arizona doesn't just move, it scours. It carves through silence like a knife across old skin, dry and unrelenting. I stood at the edge of the sniper field with dust on my boots and a stitched scar aching along my ribs that no longer meant anything to anyone. No rank on my shoulder. No name on my chest. Just a worn jacket, jeans, and the black spiral tattoo curling beneath my left sleeve. They didn't see me. Not really. Just another civilian standing too close to the fence line, probably waiting for someone. That suited me fine. My brother, Drew, knelt in the middle of the field, assembling his rifle with the slow focus of someone who's learned to ignore the noise. He'd grown since I left. Taller, more sure. But there was still something raw in his posture. He didn't yet know the difference between quiet and calm. He would. I kept my hands tucked in my jacket pockets, but the breeze didn't care about concealment. It came through hard and sharp and tugged at the sleeve, lifting it just enough for the spiral to show. That was when I saw him, Colonel Isaac Warren. Clipboard in hand, jaw squared the way career officers learn to keep themselves from chewing through steel. He was walking along the perimeter with an instructor when he saw the tattoo. His eyes locked on it. I saw the blood drain from his face. The clipboard slipped from his hand and hit the gravel with a flat slap. He didn't say anything. Didn't move for a full 5 seconds. But I knew what he was thinking. He'd seen the file. Or what was left of it. K-17X wasn't a unit. It was a name buried beneath redacted lines. A ghost. I wasn't supposed to exist anymore, not officially. Not since Silent Ember. And yet, here I was, watching the last blood I had left in this world take his final test. Watching him learn to hold breath, to feel the wind before it touched his cheek, to squeeze instead of pull. I hadn't meant for anyone to notice. I hadn't planned on being seen. But sometimes the past doesn't wait for permission. It just shows up, quiet, uninvited, inevitable. And when it does, all you can do is stand still and let the wind find you. I remember the last time someone called me by name. It was raining. Cold, vertical sheets of it falling like they had weight, like they wanted to bruise. We were on the eastern slope of a ridgeline somewhere south of Kandahar. Operation Silent Ember wasn't supposed to exist. No official orders. No confirmation. Just coordinates and dead air. I had been overwatched that night, alone, high, and still. The kind of still that gets under your skin and stays there. The kind that changes your breathing for life. Below, the team was pinned down. 5 hostiles had them triangulated between a dry creek bed and a rusted Soviet hull. I was too far out to shout. Too alone to call for backup. And too high up to miss. I adjusted. 1 click windage. No margin for error. First shot took out the north post. Second and third were breath to blood. The 4th target ran. I waited for the right step. The arc of his shoulder. He dropped before the echo faded. The last one I almost didn't take. He was crouched, pressing a radio to his mouth, calling for something bigger. I remember watching the mouth move. I remember wondering if he had a wife, kids, someone who'd smell him on a coat hanging by the door. Then I remembered my team, bleeding in the dirt. I pulled. 5 shots in the storm. 1 minute, 34 seconds. That was the end of Ember. The extraction team got out. Barely. And I walked. I burned the uniform that night. Cut the badge from my chest and tore it in half. No parade. No debrief. Just me, a firebit, and the mountain river below. The badge turned in my fingers once, the steel still warm from my body heat, then dropped into the current. Only thing I kept was the ink. Black Spiral. K-17X. A ghost name for a ghost mission. 10 years have passed. And now I'm standing in the dust of Arizona, watching a younger version of myself lean into the rifle stock like it might save him. He doesn't know what I've done. Not really. He just knows I used to be in. That I got quiet 1 year and never came back. A group of instructors were walking the line now, clipboards, radios, sunglasses. One of them, tall and loud, stopped near the center. "Let me tell you all something," he boomed, voice sharp with swagger. I was there. Operation Silent Ember. Worst storm in a decade. I made the shots that saved those poor bastards. 5 rounds, no margin. You know how hard that is in the rain. Cadets listened. Eyes wide. Heads nodded. Reverence. I recognized it. So did the man wearing it. He was lying. Lieutenant Browning. That was the name stitched on his vest. I'd never seen him before in my life. He got the ridge wrong. Said it was south slope, not east. Claimed there were 6 hostiles. I counted 5. Said it was 3 a.m. It was closer to 2:40. He described a different rifle entirely. Claimed it was his scope that steamed up, his breath that fogged. And I just stood there. Didn't correct him. Didn't even flinch. Let him tell his story. Let them believe it. That's what ghosts do. But when formation was called and the cadets lined up, Browning glanced toward the barrier and caught sight of me. "Ma'am," he called, half laughing, half smirking, "this isn't a photo booth. Instagram models belong at the visitor center." A couple of cadets chuckled. One or two turned away, embarrassed. I didn't answer. Just folded my hands behind my back and stood straighter. If he thought I was decoration, that was fine. They always do until the wind shifts. It happened during the break between firing drills. The cadets scattered across the perimeter, some huddled under shade canopies, others sitting cross-legged, checking gear, talking low. The sun was brutal. Arizona's sun always is, bright enough to cut shadows into pieces, relentless enough to make metal sweat. I stayed behind the rope line. Still. Watching Drew. He was checking the bolt assembly of his rifle, slower than usual. His trigger hand trembled, not from nerves, but exhaustion. I could see it. The cadence of a shooter when he's been training too long without water or sleep. I saw him misalign the bipod leg, just slightly. Then I saw his hands go rigid. He dropped the rifle. Silence fell like a sheet. One of the instructors turned. "God damn it, Hale, what are you?" I stepped forward before the yelling started. Just enough so my boots touched the edge of the gravel track. Drew bent down fast to recover his weapon, flustered. "Wind's coming from your left," I said, calm. "It's pushing your shoulder just off zero. Let it drift. Let it settle. Then adjust." Drew looked up. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. He just nodded barely and adjusted his hold. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. That's when it happened again. My sleeve pulled back slightly. The spiral tattoo showed. Colonel Warren had just passed behind the bleachers. He stopped. Turned. He stared like someone trying to recall a word buried in memory. Then he crossed to me. Close enough for dust to flick from his boots onto my jeans. He said nothing at first. Just stared at the black ink and the quiet that hung around me like a fog. He reached slowly into the left breast pocket of his uniform jacket. Drew it out, a piece of paper, creased and sun-faded. Folded and unfolded too many times. He opened it with care. I didn't need to read it. I knew the words by heart. The one who saved us must not be remembered by name, but must never be forgotten. He read it aloud anyway. Quietly. Like prayer. "It was you," he said, not asking. "You wrote this." I nodded once. The colonel looked at me like he was staring through time. Like he was trying to place the young woman who never came home, who vanished into silence after saving 6 lives. "I kept this," he said. "All these years." I didn't even know why, not really. "You knew," I said. "Even if they didn't tell you." He nodded slowly. Then he looked out across the field. The cadets had begun to gather again. Something in the air had shifted. Not wind. Not sound. Something weightier. Colonel Warren walked out onto the field without speaking. He stood in front of the formation. "Instructors," he called out. "Stop the drill." Browning, halfway through another round of storytelling, frowned. "Sir." "Fall in." Browning hesitated. So did the cadets. I said fall in, Warren repeated. The tone of command is unmistakable when it comes from someone who has seen death and lived to speak of it. Everyone obeyed. Colonel Warren turned to the line. "You see this woman," he said, pointing to me, voice clear but solemn. "You laughed at her. You dismissed her. You thought she was decoration." No one said anything. Warren's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. She was not only present at Operation Silent Ember, he said. She was the operation. A ripple went through the ranks. He turned slowly to Browning. "And you were never there." Dead silence. Browning's face went pale, then flushed. "Sir, with all due respect." "You lied," Warren cut him off. "You built a legacy on another soldier's blood. You took credit for shots you never fired, in a storm you never survived, on a mountain you never climbed." The cadets turned toward Browning, their faces shifting from confusion to something harder. Warren stepped forward. His voice lowered, became personal. "I was in that valley. I saw 5 men fall. I saw tracer fire turn the sky red. And I saw a silhouette on a ridgeline. Calm. Alone. A single scope blink in the lightning. And then the shots came. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He turned back to me. She didn't ask for credit. She didn't stay for medals. She disappeared. And the only thing she left was a letter. He held up the paper again. "She saved my life. Browning said nothing. He couldn't. His voice was gone. He turned and walked, staggered off the field. No one stopped him. Warren looked at the cadets one more time. Never confuse volume with truth. And never mistake quiet for absence. Remember what you saw today. He walked back toward me. I should have found you sooner, he said. I didn't want to be found. You might not be, but the truth deserves to be. I said nothing. Drew met my eyes. Just for a moment. Then he went back to his rifle. They didn't speak much after that. The cadets, I mean. After Browning left the field, after the truth settled like silt in the silence, most of them just stood still. A few looked over at me. One or two nodded faintly. But none spoke. Good. Truth doesn't need applause. It needs remembering. Training resumed, quieter this time. Warren didn't say much, just observed from the edge, eyes unreadable. You could tell he was turning over things in his head. I'd seen that look before. Men trying to measure one world against another, realizing the pieces never really fit back together again. A young recruit, barely 20, clean jawline, nervous hands, fumbled the bolt on his rifle and dropped it into the dirt. He froze. The instructors tensed. Before anyone could speak, I stepped forward again. Just a little. Just enough so he could hear me. Wind soft now. Keep your left hand loose. You're overcorrecting. He turned, startled. I saw his eyes dart to the tattoo. Then to my face. He didn't speak. Just nodded once and adjusted. There was no ceremony. No announcement. But the moment lingered, quiet and heavy. Like something had shifted just enough to open a new way forward. Colonel Warren moved again. Crossed the field toward me, but this time slower, less a man in command, more man remembering. You stayed quiet all this time, he said. I left for a reason. He nodded. You knew they buried the operation? They already had. I didn't. Not until the records stopped matching. Didn't know what I'd lost until the silence stayed. I said nothing. He reached into his coat again. This time it wasn't a letter. It was a photo. Grainy. A still from infrared footage probably. Lightning behind a silhouette. Barely discernible. Just the curve of a rifle, the angle of a shoulder. He handed it to me. You can't even see her face, he said. But everyone who made it home remembers. I stared at the image. Then folded it and handed it back. You keep it, I said. He did. They called Drew's name not long after. His final trial. The sniper test that would make or break his qualification. I moved back to the edge of the field. Out of the light. Where I belonged. They walked him out to the firing line. Gave him the final scenario, 5 targets, varying ranges, all under wind conditions, shifting speeds. He had 2 minutes. 1 breath. 1 chance. I knew the setup. I'd helped design something like it years ago. Before I left. Drew went prone. Set the rifle. Found his cheek weld. Time began. 1 target. Crack. 2nd. Crack. 3rd. Delay. Adjust. Crack. 4th. Slight pause, he felt the wind push in, corrected. Crack. 5th, no shot. He hesitated. Looked through the scope. Checked again. Nothing. His fingers twitched. The shot didn't come. Time lapsed. Instructors marked the miss. I knew what happened. His breathing broke. Just slightly. Enough to throw the shot. He came back to the line with his jaw tight, eyes straight ahead. Not angry. Not devastated. Just quiet. Like he knew he'd failed, but didn't want it to matter more than it already did. The judging officer conferred with another. Shake of the head. Disqualified. I started to turn away. Then Warren stepped forward. 1 more, he said. The officers turned to him. Sir, the rules state. I'm aware of the rules, Warren said. But I also remember a shot taken in a storm worse than this. 5 hits. No backup. No second chance. He looked at me. Sometimes the rules are just scaffolding for something bigger. Silence. Then one of the younger cadets, barely more than a boy, spoke. Let him shoot, he said. Another echoed. 1 more. Then another. And another. A quiet murmur became a standing line. Every cadet stepped forward, forming a semicircle behind Drew. No shouts. No cheers. Just presence. Warren looked at the instructors. Nodded. Drew returned to the line. This time slower. Steadier. I didn't move. But I spoke, just loud enough. Breathe out halfway. Hold. Squeeze. He didn't look at me. Just align the shot. Crack. Silence. Then the confirmation came. Bullseye. Qualified. The instructors marked it. Cadets didn't cheer, just nodded. Clapped once or twice. Enough to say we saw. Enough to say it matters. Drew didn't smile. He looked over at me and blinked once, slow, long, the way soldiers say things they don't know how to speak. I nodded back. And then stepped away from the line. They let him keep the score. Officially, Drew passed qualification with that final shot. The instructors marked it with an asterisk, noted the timing, made mention of Colonel Warren's authorization. But no one contested it. The truth had already done its work. By the time they finished the formalities, names called, scores logged, photos snapped, the sun had begun its descent, throwing long shadows over the training ground. Most cadets moved off toward the barracks, some lingering in clusters, quieter than before. A few glanced back at me, but no one approached. It was better that way. I walked along the outer perimeter, staying just inside the fence line, keeping the desert at my back and the field in front of me. I didn't need a seat at the table. I never had. A few feet away, Colonel Warren fell into step beside me. "Your brother's good," he said after a while. "Not just his aim. The way he reads the field. That's rare. He pays attention. That's not something you teach." We walked in silence a while longer. "He'll make it farther than I did," I said. "If they let him be himself." "They will," Warren said. "You cracked something open today. Might not look like much yet, but it'll echo." I didn't answer. Echoes are like ghosts. Most people hear them and forget. But he wasn't wrong. Back near the barracks, Drew stood outside the mess hall. He hadn't gone inside with the others. Instead, he waited, hands in his pockets, eyes searching the horizon. I paused. He spotted me. "Jordan," he said, quiet. That word. My name. He'd never said it like that before, not as a sibling, but as someone who now understood that names carry stories heavier than memory. "You came," he said again, softer this time. I said I would. "I thought maybe after everything you wouldn't want to see this place again." I looked past him at the rows of cinder block buildings, the rifles stacked in shadow, the flags fluttering half-heartedly in the dry wind. "I don't," I said. "But I had to." He nodded. "You saved me today." "No," I said. "I didn't." "You saved yourself. I just reminded you how." He stepped closer, pulled something from his jacket pocket. A folded piece of cloth. He opened it slowly. Inside was a patch. Old. Faded. Black embroidery against desert tan. It read simply, K-17X. "Found this," he said. "Years ago. Tucked in the inside lining of Dad's duffel bag." I stared at it. He told me once, Drew continued, that the bravest thing he'd ever seen wasn't a man charging forward, but someone who stayed still when it counted. I didn't say anything. He held the patch out to me. I didn't take it. "I left that behind for a reason," I said. "I know." We stood in silence. Then I reached up and touched it once. Let my fingers rest against the worn fabric. Then I let go. Drew folded it again. Tucked it away. "Will you stay?" he asked. "Not this time." He looked down. "I don't think they know what to do with people like you." "They don't have to." He looked up. "But we do." His voice cracked a little. Not much. Just enough to show me the weight he carried now. I placed my hand briefly on his shoulder. "Remember that," I said. "When you see someone standing quiet, when the loud ones are talking too much, look for the stillness. That's where truth lives." He nodded. And then I turned. Left him there at the edge of the mess hall, under a crooked flagpole as the wind picked up again and the training field began to empty for the night. I didn't look back. Didn't have to. The road out of the base was cracked and long, the kind of asphalt that forgot how to shine. I walked it alone. No escort. No farewell. That was the way it needed to be. But the sound came first, slow, then building. Not boots. Not rifles. Just footsteps. I turned once, just enough to see them. The cadets. Lined up on both sides of the exit path. No order given. No command issued. Just presence. Their backs straight, heads high, faces quiet. One by one, they formed two parallel lines. No one said a word. No salutes at first. No gestures. But then one of them, a boy with a scar down his cheek, the same one who'd laughed when Browning made his joke, stepped forward. He stood in front of me, boots anchored. His face was flushed, but his voice was clear. "Ma'am. I won't forget this." I looked him in the eye. "Then remember it," I said, "when you see someone standing quietly on the sidelines." He nodded, stepped back into formation. Then slowly, almost uncertainly at first, the cadets began to salute. Not from obligation. Not for rank. but for something older than regulation. Something deeper than metals. For acknowledgement. The wind moved through them like a whisper. Somewhere behind me, the flag rope clinked against the pole. The sun had dipped far enough that the shadows stretched long in gold. I didn't stop walking, but I heard it. The whisper. First from one voice, then another. K17X. Spoken with reverence. Not like a unit call. Like a name. A reminder. Not of legend, but of necessity. A symbol of something that once moved through storms without asking permission, without needing to be seen. Someone who gave everything and asked nothing in return. I reached the edge of the compound as the sun finally dipped behind the mountain range. The last of the heat bleeding into the stone. The sky turned the color of iron and bone, burnt orange fading into gray. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. I could feel them behind me still standing. Still silent. There's a kind of dignity in being forgotten. In leaving no trace but the one people carry forward in their own way. I took the side path off the road, down toward the edge of the airfield, where the old perimeter fence rusted quietly in the dusk. My truck was parked in the shadow of a comms tower. Dust gathered on the windshield. I opened the door and sat for a long moment. No radio. No sound. Just the tick of the cooling engine and the soft wind through the open window. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the only thing I'd kept for 10 years. Not a patch. Not a medal. Just a folded slip of paper with my own handwriting, faded from time and sweat. If I disappear, let it be with purpose. If I'm remembered, let it be in silence. I held it once more. Then I opened the window wider and let the paper drift out, carried by the same wind that once howled through the ridgeline during silent Ember. It spun slowly then was gone. I started the engine. As I pulled away, headlights caught the shimmer of something faint on the pavement near the gate. A chalk mark. Just initials. K17X. No one would scrub it off. Not for a while. Maybe never. That would be enough.